Okay, I'm trying to keep this as anonymous as I can. And it's strange that I can even talk rationally about these things right now. I'm not really sure where my mind and my heart, is at right now. But um, parked in this parking lot that's, by this grocery store that's, in town from where my folks live. The area out here is unincorporated. It's kind of like it's weird because it's almost like it's a town, but it's not a town, and there's like different like quote unquote neighborhoods or segments, and it's weird because like my folks, they live like 15 minutes from what is considered the center of town, and there's valleys that split off from the main valley, and then there's communities in there and all that. But went to the hospital today, kind of late in the day because I just the last 3 or 4 days I'd been there, the time I've been sleeping in my car. Just wanted to be there with my mom, and or at least be in the vicinity where, like, hey, if something does come up, I can, jump out of my car and, head in and that sort of thing, especially since she was in the ICU. But, got back. I didn't want to go home. I kind of had a bit of an argument with my dad on a number of points because it's complicated, okay? It's complicated. And I know, if anybody like my sister hears me use that language, she'll just like go at me. But I don't know. That's a whole other can of worms dealing with her. But and let's just say there's two sides to every story. Yeah, there is. But there are two sides rather. But anyways, sitting in the parking lot and just trying to sort of process my thoughts and get stuff off my chest. Because essentially, we got it was sort of almost like an initial, like, hey, we think there's something going on here sort of a deal, and they wanted to do a biopsy. They did that, and I'm trying to keep track of the days and the times. It's just been kind of like this, everything's just kind of been spinning in a sense. And I've almost kind of like lost track of time. But the deal is they had that was, I think that was back on like the 18th or the 19th of May. So like the week before official finals week for the classes I'm taking. And then going through that, that went by. And then the week after that was my mom was supposed to have like an official biopsy, and she was like kept on dragging her feet, not wanting to go in. Finally I had to threaten because, like she'd been wanting me to come down and see her all this time. And, it that sounds kind of like off to put it like that because, now it's kind of like, oh, I should have been here, like, and that's a whole other can of worms, to talk about that. And I think I kind of covered that a bit in the last video, but, I had basically threatened that, if you don't go in and get that biopsy done, I'm not going to visit, sort of thing. And so finally she caved in and went in. They did the biopsy. And we got what turns out to have been, I guess you could say, a preliminary report. It says final report on it, but it's not the official final. Like, everybody signed off on it, official, stamp or seal of the hospital, kind of sort of deal where everything's been sort of laid out. And that was a 2-page thing. I have the printout in the back of my car, in the back seat. And basically, according to that, it concluded, while, doing the pathological biopsy, they can't, somehow, and I say somehow because, and you'll understand in a moment once I kind of, roll on through it, but somehow they could measure the size of the primary tumor, which they're concluding is a tumor, because they found a mass at the head of her pancreas, and they wanted to investigate that. And apparently I don't know why they're saying that they can't, because they literally said this is 1.8 centimeters, 1.8 centimeter mass at the head of her pancreas. And now they're saying, oh, pancreatic, cancer. And it's like, okay, so is that the primary tumor? Then, like, why can't you classify its size, which one it is? And then, top of that, they couldn't determine, anything in the lymph nodes as to size and, spread and that sort of thing. But then, oh, yeah, we're saying it's metastatic because supposedly they found, a mix of inflammatory and malignant cells in the fluid that they took out of her, abdominal cavity, because they had to drain off, like, I think that was 2 liters at that point, which is a pretty significant amount. They've had to do that a second time, and they got, like, I think about another 1.5 liters or something like that. Problem with that sort of stuff is that, unless they are truly, signing off and saying these are malignant cells in here, that kind of fluid buildup could be caused by bacterial infection. It could, there's, the problem is right now we're getting like 3 or 4, I would sometimes say, almost like it feels like more like 5, 6, 7, 8, all these different like opinions and answers from, multiple doctors, like one doctor told me, oh, it's spread too much, it's untreatable, trying to tell me that I got to give up on my mother, and just like throw in the towel and prepare for the, the rapid decline and all the stuff that comes with it. As if that's just, oh yeah, totally. Let's just, sit there next to my mom while she's crying out in pain and not being able to do anything, and just, hey, ride it to the finish. Like, yeah, as if that's something you can just do. And I wanted to fight against that, because that just made me really angry. But so we had that happen with the the initial, like, those 2 pages, and saying that pancreatic cancer, stage 4 metastasized, all that. And next several days we go through from that, and my mom just starts like demanding all these pain pills, and I'm getting 2 different stories as to whether or not she started drinking again, which that's a whole other can of worms, because I largely, not entirely, but largely put a significant amount of blame on the years of alcoholism, which my father enabled, as being a major contributing factor towards, us being in this position. And, it was always this case of me, like, I decided not to do that. I tried to set a good example, tried to fight with them about that to, like, get them to stop. But, then, of course, you get to a point where you realize they're never going to stop, and it's just going to be, bad news all the way, and you have to sort of prepare yourself for that. But, she started basically just taking way too many medications. I don't know if she was really trying to, quote unquote, end it all, trying to jump around the language you're not allowed to use on YouTube. But, I don't know if she was doing that, but then she ended up, and my dad always caving in, to, like, whatever her requests are. And just, it's that typical, like, and I think this is really something that I think people need to take into consideration when they're talking about, and not to digress too much, but all this talk of, like, alpha versus beta and nice guy versus, a-hole or whatever, terminology you want to use. Because, like, this is, I think, really, like, a problem with being the nice guy or being the beta or whatever placeholder term you want to use. Because, like, people make it all about, oh, like, just, being alpha, is that going to get the girls? Am I going to get laid, bro? Do I have to be a, unrepentant a-hole to the ladies in order for them to, want to get? And it's like, in the bigger picture of things, like, doing the nice thing is not always doing the right thing. And you have some of these cases where these guys who want to be the nice guy, they're not willing to do what's necessary, because doing what's necessary is not nice. And they think, oh, that's going to, screw everything up for me, man. I'm not going to be on good terms with her, and she's not going to, we're not going to have a cozy relationship, or I'm not going to get whatever out of it. Or, on the opposite side, they'll attack, being willing to sort of stand your ground on whatever principles, and not cave in and not be, playing nice and all that, because, oh, that just makes you an a-hole, and you're, they'll throw terms like misogynistic or whatever at you, and it's kind of like, I look at my dad's case, and, he's my father, but he's always playing the nice guy, always, being this enabler, and, that's just a large part of why we're in this position, whether it was with my mom or bringing his POS family over here didn't need to be here, and they brought all their dysfunctional and abusive behaviors and just, let their POS, child molesting rapist son just run buck wild on, myself and my sister, and eventually even worse, like indescribably worse, like on the, the other extreme end of the spectrum of just like, you can't describe, the trauma and the the sexual assault, towards my youngest male cousin. But, my dad engaging in that enabling behavior. And again, apparently my mom was overdosing on Tylenol. We had to take her in the hospital, get her sort of like detoxed from that. And I know that word has become, all woo-woo-tastic, and it's become associated with just all this, fad diets and whatnot and gobbledygook, garbage. But basically, we had to get her through detoxing, get her blood pressure back up. She was super disoriented, super, she still has some of it right now, where she's just like, sometimes she's not fully cognizant of the fact that she's at the hospital, or she can't request certain things because they just, they don't allow you to bring in, let's say, food from outside, or definitely not medication from outside. They gotta keep sort of a closed, walled off garden around you, and make sure that, you're only intaking this and taking that they've, signed off on and all that. And she is in much better condition than she was, when we took her to the ER. But the idea is that she gets released from the hospital, a day or two, and we got to keep her at home, stabilize her. She has to be in stable condition so that we can get a consultation with, this world-class, best in the world, cancer treatment center. Get her in there, figure out where everything is at and what approaches they can take, and the most aggressive, effective approach, whether or not they got to do, a liquid biopsy, genetic testing to find targeted therapy, get her on, a 3-4, medication routine of chemotherapy, and get the ball rolling. And of course, the problem is that if she comes home and my dad goes back to his same old freaking behavior, and I have to, crack the whip or something like that, if he goes back and does that, then it's just going to be like, okay, like, what, we got to wait another week, and what if that is the week that would have decided whether she lived or not, Because it really hits me when she's like, telling me, please pray that my pain goes away. And I'm thinking like, well, this is stage 4. I mean, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking, I started crying because I'm trying to hide my tears. I got to try and be strong for her, so to speak. But, thinking if this is stage 4 metastatic cancer, then, quote unquote, praying for the pain to go away basically means praying that you'll die quick. That, then, if she's dead, then her pain will be gone, sort of thing. And I don't want to, be in that state. Like, I hate to sound entitled, but this is kind of like, like sitting here in this situation going like, is this really happening? Is this really, the result of all this? And I wanted to compare myself to, like, the monster who caused so much grief for us, and thinking like, oh, he doesn't have to be sitting there and in a hospital while his mom slowly wastes away. He doesn't have to be, thinking about funeral plans for her, and, what were you going to do with this, and what were you going to do with that when she's gone? And, that's some of that for him. It's like, oh, that's often, 20 years, 30 years, when they're in their 80s or their 90s, like, and by then, it'll be all okay, and we'll be able to accept it, not, them dying right when they're, they've just gotten inside of retirement, age, and, getting to go and do the stuff that, if a person has done what they're supposed to do in life, and other factors have lined up, external factors, they should be able to, at that age, go, you know what, got married, had our kids, we raised them right, we didn't, screw them up in the head, they're off doing their own thing, they got their lives going, we're retired, we got our savings, we got the house paid off, blah, blah, blah. We can go and, travel, we can go on a road trip, we can do this, we can do that, but no, in this family, it's, no, you get to not just come home to visit your parents, but come home to, like, see your mom for the last time, like, I guess it's the last time, it seems like, that I'll be seeing her alive, and it has to be that I'm seeing her in a hospital bed, or I'm seeing her hobble along on a walker, or seeing her laying in, the master bedroom, crying out in pain, and, not being able to do a damn thing, which is, I've talked about psychological emasculation a lot. I dealt with that at the hands of that scumbag cousin of mine. I dealt with that at the hands of, that girl, the ex-girlfriend, as well as that girl in college, and, her pack of, fans who, themselves are not probably having to deal with this kind of stuff, but, like, it's also emasculating to, like, see your mom laying there in pain, and as a man, sorry, all these folks who want to be misandrous and hate on men and all that, but, like, it's emasculating to see your mother in pain like that and not be able to do a damn thing. That you're standing there and, like, well, what can I do? Because, like, men are human doings. We're supposed to be, like, active and, okay, here's the problem, I engaged my brain, got the solution, gonna act on it, okay, we solved the problem, and we're good. But you can't do anything in these situations. You're just sitting there like, what can I do? Hold her close, talk to her, be with her while she's dealing with the fear of death, and, what's next, and how is this gonna end, and all the things we coulda, woulda, shoulda done, like I've forgiven her at this point for any of the things that I think that I either think that she did or that she actually did, which, hurt me in the past. And, if we can ever have that conversation, I want to get that across to her that, I've forgiven her, I've let it go, because, I think I said in that last video, like, she was the one who, she stood up for me, she came to protect me, she tried to, like, stop my dad from going too far when it came to disciplining me, when he just wanted to just beat the life out of me. And, now here we are. And, I always thought it was going to be my dad who would go first. Now it seems like it's going to be my mom. And, the people who are left behind, like, I don't have that kind of connection with them, I don't have that kind of connection with my sister. And it's not for lack of trying. Maybe I gave up after a certain point, but I definitely tried before that. And with my father, well, he's my father. I'll just put it that way. But, this is where we're at, where, God, I hope this delay isn't like so much that, it's like, well, if you got in here a week earlier, this would have been, so much more effective, and because, with cancer, it's just, I think one of the worst parts of it is that it's unpredictable. You'll hear stories of folks who are stage 4, stage 4B, verging on terminal, and, they got in and they got the treatment, and, it worked for them, and 6 months later they were declared, NED, no evidence of disease, and then they maybe they pushed beyond that and did a little more chemo, and now they're, they got nothing, and they, 10 years, 15, 20 years out, they survived it, and then you have other folks who, similar situation, and doctors came by one day and said, this isn't working, I'm sorry, this, your father, your mother, your brother, your sister, you yourself, you only have 2 more weeks tops, of life. And, you think about all the time that was wasted on so many stupid things, so many stupid arguments about politics and religion, and just like, things, time you were wasting on projects that were never going to go anywhere. And by the time you really figured out what you should be doing with your life, it was, 3, 4, 5 years later, and where things would be if you had just, sort of owned up to it, or realized, or, whatever the case may have been. Or if other people hadn't been doing what they were doing and just, disrupting you when you're actually making a genuine effort and putting your best foot forward and all that. And, it's kind of like, if at 36, I was in a healthy, functional relationship with some woman, I was married to her, and we had, 2 or 3 kids, and, had my own house, and this and that, and things were just going along, and my kids knew their grandmother, and all that, it would still hurt, because I remember when my grandpa died, and he was 66, and I was 5 years old, and so, like, I was old enough to have at least a few memories of him, and to kind of, like, remember the sound of his voice, and, the smell of the cologne he would wear, and, just his, like, general presence, and I still, like, cried my eyes out, as the expression goes, when I heard that he had died. In retrospect, it was largely preventable. If they had just kept up the antibiotics, he would have presumably made it back. And there's, all these things that, I would have wanted to talk to him about, his service in the Navy during World War II and what that was all like. And, it probably would have prepared me better mentally for, like, what I was trying to do when I was, the age that he was when he, when he joined up. And, all these things are like conversations you'll never get to have, and you just sort of, you think about a lot of that sort of stuff. But I don't know what, what we're looking at here, because, God, I remember I had 2, actually 3 friends. They're all brothers. They were the closest things to, or I would actually, consider them like best friends of mine in high school, who their mother, she was a tough woman, she'd been in the Marines, she'd done all these things, she was, tough as nails, but she got breast cancer, and she eventually died from it. Apparently, like the chemotherapy didn't do much. I think it prolonged her life, but I don't even remember how long she was on, chemotherapy for, and how long, it extended her life, really, and it's not something that I want to call them up and talk to them about right now, because, as much as it might be, I guess I suppose, cathartic for me, it's going to bring up, the memories that they have of that time, and, for one of them, the brother that I was, closest with, friends with, he was closest to my age, he went off the deep end, and, he went off the deep end, and he lost his faith for a time there, and he just, it was like he tried to fill a void with sex, basically. And, no homo, he's a conventionally masculine guy, he could, and, he has the swagger, he can pull in the girls, he's one of those guys who, like, he was raised very conservative, Catholic and all this, and, he was the kind of guy who, he could kind of be like the pro-social, alpha type, who, you know, a leader of men and, you know, and a man of faith, you know, and all this kind of stuff, who, you know, could get married, have the wife who, you know, couldn't keep her hands off of him, and they'd have like the successful, you know, Catholic Christian marriage, and, you know, be that sort of example of that. But he, like, for a time that he was kind of like wandering in the desert of like faithlessness, you could say, and, you know, just slept around with multiple women. Eventually he reconnected to his faith. Somehow he kind of came out of that and ended up, you know, going off to a Bible college and, like, you know, you could say repenting of, you know, what he had done during that time, where he was just like, you know, he basically, and it's not, you know, I'm not saying this to be derogatory towards him, because, like, he honestly, like, went through hell, you know, losing his mother. And you know, it's one of those things, like I talked about in the last video, about, like, you know, the relationship between a man and his mother, you know, and what that all means. But you know, he eventually reconnected with his faith and returned to it and all that. And, you know, I think he went back to school, got an engineering degree, actually, computer engineering or electrical engineering or something like that. And I think he's married now, and he's kind of like, you know, things have kind of come full circle. You know, then his older brother. And by the way, this guy, like, he was more like leaning towards, like, you know, we're going to be scientific and rational about it, and we're going to, you know, medicine is there, and, you know, we can do so much with, you know, with our scientific, you know, knowledge and know-how. And that almost, like, also broke his faith in that for a time. Well, then his older brother, who I believe had joined the Air Force by that point in time and enlisted, he I think he kind of went the opposite way and got kind of buried in his faith, and was kind of like trying to hold on to that, because that was, like, you know, sort of the rock bed of things. And I think, from what I recall, like, obviously he went sort of through a, you know, just like his brother, he went through a similar sort of, like, you know, lonely night of the soul sort of a thing, and just, you know, as anybody would, you know, questioning, like, why my mother, why, you know, my family, why did this have to happen, you know, what did, you know, kind of like, what did we do to deserve this, kind of like what I'm going through right now. But somehow he came through that as well, got married, and he had, you know, several kids, and you know, he's got a family of his own. You know, but he's still very much stuck to the, you know, waiting till marriage and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I don't know how he was able to hold on to that, but and I don't remember how the third, you know, the youngest brother took it, because, you know, there was 3 brothers and a sister. I don't know how the youngest brother honestly handled things. I don't know what kind of, you know, what sort of journey he went through, you know, coming to terms with that. But you know, all this kind of, it's almost like coming back to me now from what I remember of that time, because it's just all the, you know, frightening similarities. But anyways, that's where things stand right now. I don't know what I'm going to do right now. If I'm going to just, you know, go back home, or go drive someplace where I can just, like, be out of the house for a bit. Because I know that, you know, I mean, you know, I could go back to the hospital, try and park in the parking lot and sleep in the car, you know, or what have you. But I just don't feel like being in the house right now. Apparently my sister's gotten kind of sick. She's running a temperature and, you know, coughing a lot. You know, she has her own set of health challenges, is all, you know, I'll call them, to face. But, you know, it's kind of like, you know, when it rains, it pours. You know, when there's one fire, there's like 3 suddenly popping up, and you're having to run around from one to the next and trying to do all this stuff to put them out. And, you know, I don't know. Still on NoFap. Grades should release for my classes tomorrow, or starting tomorrow. Looking at 2 A's and an A minus, or maybe, straight A's, depending on if some of my, last minute extra credit counts for my Calc 2 class. Taking some summer classes, those should start on the 15th. And, assuming we get my mom in and get this ball rolling and we're going through that, I'll at least have that going on as something that I can be doing, while I'm, I don't want to use the expression, quote unquote, dealing with this, but as we're handling this, I guess you could say. And, wow, just things that we're all having to think through and process and understand and come to grips with and, accept and prepare ourselves for and all that, as much as I thought things were going to go bad and get really bad, I didn't think it was going to be like this, or maybe I hope that it would get to this, get like to the line, to the line where it's like, oh, cross this line and now we're in, crisis territory, everything falling apart territory, and that, somehow the family will pull together and go, oh man, we need to change what we're doing. We need to change our tune. We need to, oh man, that was a close one. That was a cancer scare, or a heart disease scare. And we're going to shape up and we're going to do all these things differently. And, then they would do that, and then they would, get results from doing that. That it wouldn't be that they attempted and it didn't change anything, but that they would, start living healthy, get disciplined about stuff, and that, they would change course. It would be like that last minute, veering off away from, the event horizon or something like that. But again, I don't know. But that's where things stand right now. And, over half an hour of video, so I'm going to stop here. And if I feel like making something more later, I'll do that. But that's how things stand right now. So thanks for watching, and thanks for the support, Constitutional Stacker, Alex, etc. I do one of these days want to really get into talking about stacking your precious metals, because there's a little bit of family history in there in a good sense, and it's something that I have developed something of a passion for. I used to be kind of preaching it to my coworkers when I was working, at the biotech company up north, kind of getting them all into it too, that sort of thing, spreading the word, evangelizing for stacking. I want to talk about just, other topics, but, right now this is the one that's like, in my focus. So, like I said, I'm going to stop recording here, and I'll hopefully see you folks around, and I hope it's with, much better news than, what we have right now. Kind of scaring me, to put it lightly, the waiting for the final results to come out and for them to, give their spiel and all that, especially since, when I got here, I saw my mom first. She was like, oh, great, you're here. Maybe this is, a sign that we'll be getting some good news. And so far it hasn't been the case, but anyways, I'll see you folks around. Thanks for watching, and thanks for the support. Bye-bye.